Well, I am so excited to be welcoming in my wonderful mentor and guide, Violetta Pleshakova, to the Therapy Wise podcast. Welcome, Violetta.
Oh, thank you for having me, Jenny. It's an absolute pleasure to be here.
Wonderful. So I thought we would start with a little personal anecdote for me about the work that we've been doing that continues to unfold and what it's been like for me. So I can shower you with praise, and then we'll get into the topic that we're going to explore together today.
All
So,
right, but just be ready. I will shower you with praise back.
all right, I'll prepare. So, a couple of years ago, I had reached out to you because I just saw a post that you had posted somewhere. It had nothing to do with anything that I was interested in, really. But I thought, who is this woman? She was enticing to me. So I reached out to you and we had our intake call. And I immediately knew that you were the mentor for me. And I don't know if you recall what that call was like, but I remember saying, I really don't know what I need. I don't know what I want specifically, but I think that you're the one that's going to be offering it to me. And we began working together, and it has been absolutely life-changing for me. You have helped me to understand different aspects of my life that have unfolded and activate my gifts, activate power, activate certain ways of being that I've always had that I didn't really understand. And you've helped me to channel them in a way that I can help more people. And it's just been such a beautiful unfolding. Now we are working on an ordination process where you are ordinating me as a high priestess. And it's a beautiful unfolding continually. And so I just wanted to start with that and just shower you with praise and tell everyone about what you have done for me.
Oh, thank you for that, Jenny. And from my side, anytime somebody comes and says, "Hey, I want to work with you," I don't know why, but I just feel this resonance. I know that magic is in the works. This is my favorite way to meet clients. And I feel like you and I, we have this beautiful soul level agreement, soul contract, even for me to support you with you unfolding and your unlocking of the template that you already have. I cannot make you into a high priestess, but I can support you to remember that you already are a high priestess. And I can simply guide you through the process, through all the initiations, the ordination process, coming into your own priestess template and your deeper layers of spiritual leadership. So, and from my side, it's been an absolute joy to work with you because, you are somebody who is just like takes the insight, implements it right away, and 5 minutes later, you already come with like the next question. Okay, let's just do it. You just like you do not wobble, and that to me is a very important quality in a leader and in a fellow spiritual mentor, because you work with leaders as well. It's like you really walk the talk, and so for everyone listening, it's like I can confirm that Jenny is the real deal because I have seen her go through her inner processes, and she is just like passing her initiations with flying colors.
Well, thank you so much. I think you and I really click in part because we have a lot of similar qualities. We both have
Yeah.
PhDs, we're both very mystical. And I think just even that is a bit of an unusual combination. And we're both very on the ball. When we say we're starting at 9, we're starting at 9. It's not 9:05, it's 9. And I think we
Yes.
appreciate those aspects of each other.
But I think, those qualities are the qualities of spiritual leaders, actually. Spiritual leader, and to me, high priestess and spiritual leader is not somebody who is lofty and all up in the clouds. She actually has to be on point and on the ball, as you called it, because she has a certain level of responsibility. She has a temple to take care of. She has her kingdom to take care of. She's not just like chilling on her throne with her crown and her paraphernalia. No, she is somebody who holds a lot of responsibility, and that requires her to be very, very intentional and very, very present and in full ownership of her power. And so I think you and I are really unlocking that within ourselves deeper and deeper.
Absolutely. So I would love to hear about your unfolding of your path, your priestess knowledge and identity, and the initiations that you've been through on the way to where you're at today.
Well, I could talk all day because it's basically the story of my life. It started way before I was born. And I'm just thinking how to angle it in a way that can be relevant and useful for your audience. And I think I want to start with highlighting that, to me, being a mystic and being a leader, being a spiritual being, and being let's say in my high priestess self, it's not something that I have just chosen one day. It's not a hobby, it's not a side gig, it's not an interest, it is a template. And many of us who are mystically inclined, yeah, who have this calling to a deeper path, a spiritual path, a soul path, we feel that there is some sort of momentum that is propelling us forward, whether we want it or not. It is, as I call it, a set of codes, a set of templates, or even a blueprint, like that underlying force. I would say it literally is light codes woven into the fabric of your entire being, even inside your DNA. And this light simply wants to burst free, and it wants to illuminate the world and emanate from your field, from your entire aura. Yeah. So for me, that was the story. I came in already with this template. I came in with several soul level missions and assignments and abilities. And then, of course, I incarnated as a child. Yeah. So, and I was that mystical child who remembered her past lives, and a weirdo and an outcast and the odd one out and all of that. And so to me, it was a choiceless choice. It's not that I had, I think, any say in the matter. It was just simply me accepting that what my soul has already agreed upon with God, before I even came here. But in more practical terms, you mentioned that I have a PhD. So for a while, I thought I was going to pursue an academic career, because since my teenage years, I had abilities in the realm of public speaking. I loved it. It always came easy to me to be in academia. I loved nerdy stuff like research and writing papers. Never had to study for any exam. It was just natural. I was just like inhaling books. And I thought I was going to just be in the realm of, I studied project management and cultural studies, and also at the beginning international politics. At first, my intention was, I'm going to go work for the United Nations, but I got disillusioned pretty quickly. So I ended up not going there. And, well, the year was 2029, 2009. I'm like beyond space and time. Okay. It was 2009, 2010, when I was doing my master's and then started my PhD. And as I was swimming in that realm of project management and all of that, it was all still pretty new in the realm of coaching. But I was doing an internship in consulting, and there I was introduced to coaching as that new emergent discipline. And I thought, this is exactly what I want to be doing. Because since my early, let's say, teenage years, I had deep interest in philosophy, in psychology, in understanding big things like how does the brain work, and what makes human tick, and why are we the way we are, and what's on the other side, what happens after we die, like all those big questions. And my family kind of indulged my interests because I was raised by fellow nerds. Like my dad was always reading spiritual books. My grandfather was an absolute genius. He was a scientist, but he was also a poet and a philosopher. So it's like my mind was well fed. Yeah. But they all said, no. We're not going to let you study psychology and philosophy because you already are a little bit crazy. That's literally what they said. They were like, no, you need to ground yourself. You need to choose something that is a little bit more practical. And so I ended up compromising with my family and studying international politics and project management. They wanted me to have a degree that I could apply in the real world. Yeah. But look at me now. So it did not help. Okay, it did not help at all. I always say you can take the girl out of the temple, but you cannot take the temple out of the girl. Again, it's the template or the temple. You cannot erase it. You will, as you yourself very well know, with your career. Here you are being a spiritual mentor, leadership mentor. We are having this conversation. You are getting trained as a high priestess with me. So you cannot erase that. It's a soul level contract. But I digress. So I was talking about, what was I talking about? Yeah. So I discovered coaching. I was introduced to coaching, and I thought, this is my way back to my interests, to philosophy and psychology and all those big questions. And so I got trained as a coach, and I started my journey as a coach in 2011, which was like ages ago. And coaching industry, let me tell you, was in its infancy. Nobody knew what coaching was. And there was no Instagram, okay, such thing as coaching business and all of those antics that we can currently observe online. They were literally non-existent. The way we enrolled people to attend coaching seminars was word of mouth. I was holding lots of free events to fill my trainings up. It was all through networking and word of mouth and actually being really good at what you do. Then people start recommending you to their friends. But sometimes we received a lot of resistance from people who were skeptical, who was like, are you starting a cult? So long story short, I ended up training as a coach, and then later on serving as a trainer at the coaching school where I got trained. I traveled around the world delivering trainings in Belgium, Germany, Netherlands, Russia, India, South Africa. So it was all quite exciting. And in parallel, of course, all of my mystical abilities, they now had a whole new playground, because just dealing with people and facilitating transformation, facilitating in-person seminars around such subjects as consciousness and mindset and self-development, they naturally evoked my ability in the realm of, let's say, more subtle realms, like being psychic, being intuitive, seeing people's past lives. It started to happen more and more and more and more, and eventually I had no choice but to pursue that path full on, where I started to digress from traditional coaching, from, let's say, more life coaching or ontological coaching, and moved into the mystical domain. And I realized that, okay, what I'm actually doing is priestess work. When I got introduced to it, when I got trained by my mentor 8 years ago, when I unlocked my abilities with energy healing and past lives and all of that, I saw how everything was, in a way, just a sequence of building blocks leading me to that profound revelation. And then I started to own my priestess role in a very public way. It's even in my Instagram handle, Starfire Priestess at the moment, and Temple of Starfire is the name of my business. And so for me, it is that merging of the inner and the outer. And I feel right now my outer life really reflects my inner life. And it's a very interesting feeling, I must say, and a very interesting journey. I think it's everybody's journey is so unique, but the destination is that bridging, that marriage of the inner and the outer, so that whatever work you do in the world, whatever public persona you have, begins to reflect who you are on the soul level.
Mm-hmm. It really makes me think about the process that you did with me that I found so powerful, called Find Your Emanation. No, the Resonance Hunt. Where
a resonance hunt, you mean the one
yes,
with karmic storylines? Yes.
yes. I just found that so fascinating, because you had me just kind of explore different pieces that kind of had been a thread all throughout my life, and it helped me to understand who I really am. And I feel like your story that you just told about your life, you've given a very bird's eye view overview of what you've done. There was so much more detail, obviously, including, being a coach trainer in your 20s, which I think would have been a very challenging thing, being so young and having such a high level position. But I think that we can all kind of look through our life experience and see all these little breadcrumbs that are kind of showing us, okay, who is the true essence of me, and how can I embody that more and more in my life?
Oh yes, this is one of my favorite things to do with people, because when I relate to somebody, be that professionally or privately, I always try to look for the essence of that person, who they are beyond their human persona. personality, identity, and ego. Because a lot of our layers that we perceive as, okay, this is me, they are actually not our truest layers. They are adaptations, or they are different coping mechanisms, or they are ancestral patterns, and they do not reflect that timeless core of who we are. I call it soul, because from my perspective, things like parallel lives and reincarnation are very real. If somebody doesn't believe in it, you can call it your true self or your higher self. I prefer the term soul, which to me simply means an individuation of the greater source, God, divine personification of that through one individual entity. And each soul has its own unique emanation, which is a constellation of frequencies that are your energetic signature, that contain timeless imprints of who you are, including your gifts, your skills, your particular perspectives on reality. And I love looking at those little, let's say, manifestations of that essence throughout our life. And if you go digging, you will find that it has always been there. It's like a red thread. Who you were as a child, what you do when nobody's watching. If you had, I don't know, 5 hours left to live, what would you do? And things like that. If you were given a microphone and you could talk to 1 million people, what would you talk about? You know, those kind of things, they really put it into perspective and allow you to tap into what truly matters. And sometimes we forget about that. We get distracted. We get entangled in social expectations and family systems and all of that, and we forget what that timeless core is. But the closer we come to that, the more we can align with what I call soul destiny timeline. And this is also one of the processes that we have done, remember, where you are stepping onto that specific timeline that reflects that what your soul intends for you to experience in this life. It's your curriculum. It doesn't mean that your highest timeline is the easiest one or even the happiest one. Again, many people only end there, and that was one of my problems with traditional coaching, which was all about, okay, but what do you want? What do you want to create? You can create whatever you want, which has its place. But to me, there is also such a thing as soul destiny, which can include soul missions that are not fun, or soul contracts that need to be completed, that will challenge you, and that will require some karmic reckoning and deep healing, you know, even intergenerational healing and multidimensional healing. And many people resist that. They only want to have their, you know, comfortable, cute life, which is fine. But if you are a high priestess, or if you have a bigger calling, you probably also have a matching soul curriculum that will first feel like you're going through a sequence of initiations and literally like you're getting burned alive, which is part of the making of a high priestess, a spiritual leader, and a truly, let's say, a truly embodied mystic.
Mm-hmm. What do you think are some of the biggest factors that you see that stop mystics from being able to fully embody their soul destiny timeline?
That's a good one. I'm just tuning in. Well, the first thing that is coming up is fear. And the thing is, the fear itself is not the problem. It is how interested people are in their fears.
Mm-hmm.
I'm wondering what your perspective on this is as a therapist.
Mm-hmm.
Because to me, how I see it, when people face fear, for example, fear of persecution, let's say the witch wound karmic imprint, when they face resistance, say, or misunderstanding from their family, they start really focusing on that. They start getting so invested in, oh, how do I get over my fear? How do I heal my fear? Instead of focusing on, but who am I on the soul level? And I find that when you connect with the soul and when you start focusing on that, it naturally supersedes all of those fears and they dissolve in that soul light. I see it in the quantum because I see everything on the inner planes. From, let's say, the perspective of energetics, from the quantum perspective, I literally see how that emanation of your soul essence, how that soul stream and soul destiny timeline and higher powers like God, source, whatever, they are so interested in you fulfilling your mission and in you embodying the role as a priestess, as a mystic, as a healer, whatever is your specific archetype, that those fears, they cannot hold you back unless you let them, unless you get so enmeshed in those imprints of karma and wounding and scarcity and suffering and whatever somebody else has in their curriculum. But all of that can be dissolved pretty quickly when you just look at it. You really look at it and you don't get emotionally attached to it or invested, and you don't make it a big deal, essentially, where you're like, you know what, yes, I have reservations about this path. Yes, maybe I have some fears. Yes, maybe it's not accepted in the world. Yes, maybe it will require me to make some changes in my life, like, I don't know, quit my job or rearrange my friend circle, but I know that this is my truth. I literally do not understand why people are not loyal to their truth, because to me, that is the main motivation. What is true? And many people also have difficulty connecting with their channel and discerning what their truth is, because they have been taught to distrust themselves. So they do not have that foundational relationship that allows them to trust the messages that they are getting. And when I do intuitive training with people, this is one of the first things that comes up. They're like, yeah, I'm getting messages, but I never act on them, because they lack trust. And there is a certain level of restoration and repair that needs to happen in your relationship with yourself before you can fully embrace the mystical path. You need to learn to trust yourself, and you need to be willing to put your truth and soul truth and authenticity above such things as acceptance, safety, comfort, and so on. You really need to learn how to move through fire and how to hold yourself steady when the ground is shaking. So that's just what's coming up just from the top of my head.
Yeah, I completely agree with all of that. And, you asked my perspective on as a therapist on fear. I definitely think that we can get very stuck in paying too much attention to it and in healing loops around fear. And we definitely do not want to bypass fear. But I think that often what ends up being missing is just taking action steps, like just moving forward in our soul aligned path. The more that you do that, you know that I activate gifts in people. So let's say someone is starting to recognize that they have certain gifts. I have noticed that pattern that you were just speaking to, where when they start to behave in alignment with those gifts and start to offer them, start to listen to them, start to get aligned with them, those fears just begin to start to melt away. And it becomes just kind of a non-issue, not in a bypassing way, but in a just stepping into a more aligned path sort of way.
I so agree. You said action. I say that all the time. You need to act on the guidance that you receive, because, if you want for God, I don't know, spirit guides, your soul to show up for you, you need to start showing up for them. And it's like a relationship. I feel that our relationship with our destinies, with our souls, and even with God, with the divine, it is as much of a relationship as our relationships with our significant others and friends. You cannot just have a one-sided relationship. You need to give before you receive. It's that mutual flow. It's reciprocity. And same applies to mysticism and spirituality. You have to show up. It's such basic such basic thing, to show up for your devotional practice, to show up and ask for guidance. And sometimes people are like, I'm not getting anything. And I'll go like, yeah, but have you asked? And they're like, no, I'm just sitting here. Like, people don't realize that it's a relationship, that they need to be more proactive. And that I also agree with you with regards to loops. People go on loops and they start overthinking it and analyzing it and looking for 500 signs, and they're not going to take action unless they see 11:11 on their microwave, and it's like, no, people, come on. We are still sovereign beings. We still hold a level of agency. Even as spiritual beings, we hold a level of, let's say, choice and free will as humans as well. So it is a co-creation. It's a dynamic co-creation between your soul, God, and your human self. So it is a relationship that needs to be cultivated, and you get to show up for it every day.
Yeah, I think we sometimes behave as if it's, well, number one, we ask for help when we're in this desperate situation, but we haven't necessarily been cultivating the relationship, the understanding, what it feels like to receive messages, the reciprocal energetic exchange. And so then we say, well, nobody showed up, or I didn't get any messages. And there's not that basis of understanding there, even though, of course, God is always there, our higher self is always present and speaking to us, but we just haven't developed that ability necessarily to hear the messages that are coming through.
Yeah, most of us do not receive this training as children. And here I'm again taken back to my childhood, that I was so intuitively open, I would see things in the air, like apparitions even, and outlines of people's aura. I don't see it anymore with such level of precision. I perceive it more with my inner eye. But as a child, I was so open. And I have to think to myself, in ancient societies, let's say in ancient Egypt, they would start training priests and priestesses at a very young age 3 even, and something like that. If a child was displaying those abilities, those psychic and intuitive abilities and energy healing abilities, they would be taken into a temple. They would be given proper training. They would be encouraged, for those gifts to blossom. And then you never even have that experience of going through the veil of forgetfulness and disowning your gifts. So it's not even a reclamation. It's just a natural unfolding. But for most of us, those gifts that are present when we get born, they get shut down when we socialize. And then it becomes so sometimes so difficult, really, and even emotional for people to break down all of those defenses and to come back to who they really are. And for me, it makes me so sad that a lot of people never tap into their full intuitive potential, and they never unlock it just because they still carry a lot of shame and prejudice around it, or because they shoved it down, they hid it so deeply that they can no longer find that pathway. And it is my deepest desire and vision for the world that we begin to see the mystical world and the intuitive world as very, very important and very, very real. That we bring back the role of mystics, especially feminine mystics and priestesses, bring back their role as sacred vessels and bridges between realms, that we resurrect temple culture in a non-religious way, that we remove fundamentalist religions and dogma and cults and all of that, which is just the distortion of the ancient mystery teachings and mystery schools and the entire principle of mysticism. So it is my deep desire and vision, and sincere intention also is in my work to see a resurrection of that, so that people can start tapping into their abilities from childhood, and so that people can have their oracular channel active, because then we will become more sovereign individuals. And this is how we actually step into our co-creative power, and this is how we create new timelines for this planet.
Oh, beautiful. So I know that you are a history buff and you love history and how history has taught us in various ways. And so I'm curious about your perspective on the feminine mystics historically and the role that they played in the world that we live in.
Yeah, so originally, thousands of years ago, the feminine was seen as the source of spiritual authority and spiritual power, not the masculine. Now, what we see when we think about spiritual power, we often think about Catholic Church, we think about the Pope, we think about Vatican, we think about organized religion that sometimes doesn't even allow women to hold positions of power, like in Catholic Church. Now, way back when, let's say ancient Egypt, 2000 BC, and even before that, we can go even as far back as Neanderthal societies or early shamanic cultures or indigenous cultures, where women, due to their energetic design and even the design of their bodies, women were portalways. It was feminine beings who held the ability to travel between realms. So women intrinsically have that ability to transcend the limitations of the rational mind, because the feminine is the non-linear, the masculine is structural, linear, and rational. And so, of course, we can see that patriarchy coincides with the rise of our faith in logic and intellect and the domination of the rational mind, cogito ergo sum, the Descartes tradition, and this whole, doctrine of I need to see it to believe it, that science is above nature, science is above God, that idea of that we can conquer what we don't know, and that not knowing is dangerous. But it's the feminine who dwells in the unknown. She is very comfortable with not knowing. And by she, I mean the energetic feminine, not gender. So the feminine has access to the exact spaces, the liminal spaces in subtle realms that hold the answers that we so deeply desire. We have so many questions in our modern world. We have a crisis of identity, especially in the Western world. It's a huge crisis of our identity, crisis with regards to how we view ourselves, how we view our society, what we are doing to the planet, what we are doing to fellow human beings, how we treat others, how we kill children for political reasons and justify that, you know. Okay, so that's not even going to go there. But essentially, it's a crisis of faith, and people are disappointed in religion because they are not finding answers to the questions that they have. People lack meaning. That's why so many people get distracted. They get stuck in addictions or in the illusionary world of social media and status symbols and outer representations. So I'm like, just painting red on roses here because everyone knows what I'm talking about. But essentially, if we are to come back to true meaning and true fulfillment, to things like having purpose in our lives and repairing the damage that we have inflicted upon this earth, if we are to experience this repair and this unification, we have to go back to respecting the feminine. We have to go back to respecting things that cannot ever be comprehended or even touched by the mind, that cannot be conquered, that cannot be extracted from. We have normalized extraction. We have normalized separation. We have normalized individualism, which is all directly at odds with the life-giving essence of the feminine. And again, in the ancient world, before the fall of the temples, before the distortions, before patriarchy, the feminine was revered. You will look everywhere. Mesopotamian civilizations like the Akkadian civilization, the Sumerian civilization, the ancient Egyptian civilization, and even primal cultures, you will find that they all worshipped the goddess. Earth-based religions, early religions of early days, they all worshipped goddesses, or they all gave women a very high status, like in ancient Egypt, high priestess. There was even a title, God's wife of Amun. The wife of the pharaoh was also the high priestess. So she was also the mother of the next pharaoh. She, the holder of keys. She who is the portalway between realms. She who is the vessel for God. She goes and communes with God directly. That's how society can get better answers. If we are looking at, okay, how can we change our politics? How can we heal our economy? Restore our relationship with the planet? Well, we need to stop asking the mind. We need to stop asking things like statistics and numbers. We need to start looking for answers in the liminal space. And who can go to the liminal space? Somebody who doesn't dwell in the mind, she who dwells in the body. And that is a priestess. That is a feminine essence being, because she is coded to be oracular. She is coded to receive answers, to literally pull them from the ethers, because that's where she dwells. She dwells in the cauldron of her womb, which is the real Holy Grail. If you follow Magdalene mysteries and heresy teachings of the Cathars and so on, you will find that the Holy Grail is a symbol of the chalice, and the chalice is the womb. And that chalice can receive guidance, can receive the elixir of soul transmission. What I was talking about earlier, your emanation, your soul essence, it descends into your body. You don't have to ascend somewhere to leave the body and to become super enlightened. You don't have to see the body as sinful the way church is painting it. Actually, the body is where you find the answers. And who better than a woman to go to the body? Because a woman's entire existence is body-based. Hello. Through blood mysteries, through childbirth, through sacred sexuality, through the mysteries. This is how she communes with God. She finds God in her body. The feminine cannot find God outside of her body. Forget it. You will not succeed. The whole idea of ascending and so on, it doesn't work for feminine essence beings, just as a side note. But essentially, in those societies who recognized the value of the feminine, who respected the body, they automatically respected the planet. You cannot if you normalize raping a woman, you are normalizing, should have come with trigger warning, you are normalizing extracting and abusing the planet, because the feminine is not seen as sacred. She has been kicked off from her throne, kicked out of the temple. And she has been co-opted, and she has been over-sexualized. So instead of reviewing her sexuality as a birthing channel through which she downloads divine codes and gives them and emanates them and shares them with society, because she has gone and talked to God. Now she has guidance. For example, the Oracle of Delphi, that was an institution in ancient Greece. Some said that only highborn women were trained as oracles, that they were of the purest blood, that they were essentially royal. And that was the highest definition of royalty, not your position and not your status, your spiritual calibration and your ability to bring through guidance. So the Oracle of Delphi, as an institution, is one of those, famous examples that we can all relate to. Know thyself. So those examples, they show us that women were designed to give spiritual guidance to rulers, just like God's wife of Amun, high priestess, the key advisor to Pharaoh, the key advisor to the king. All of that was lost. All of that was desecrated. And here we are, trying to restore it. And we are trying to restore it. I think my problem with modern day feminism, I have a problem with it, because it does so. Yes, the idea is great. Let's bring back women as leaders. I'm all for that. But it is doing that without having first healed the feminine and without bringing her back to the body. So the feminine can do us no good as a leader if she's disconnected from her oracular abilities, which live in the body. So what's the point in pushing her into power positions if she essentially has, if she is appearing energetically, running her energetics through a masculinized shell? So she's actually not being the oracular feminine that she's designed to be. Yes, she can appear in the body of a woman, but if she's disconnected from the technology, from the quantum technology of the feminine, it is just parody. It's nothing. It's not substantial. It's shallow. And so essentially, historically, we are bringing it back because it's necessary, because this is what will give us the answers that we so need for our society. And this will rebalance the frequencies and will connect us with the life-giving energy of the feminine, with her ability to create life, with her ability to restore, with her ability to unify. And essentially, to me, the destination is union, a union of masculine and feminine who are supposed to be rulers in the bridal chamber. The king and the queen unite in the king-making bridal chamber mysteries for the sake of birthing the divine child. And this, of course, is a metaphor. It doesn't have to be a physical child. The bridal chamber of that sacred union serves the purpose of unification of opposites and serves the purpose of alchemical marriage that creates something that did not exist before. And this is how we will rebirth the world. It has to come through union. And sometimes the masculine does not understand that union is necessary. It's the feminine who craves union because she's relational. She has that inner momentum that propels her to desire and create union. So when we exalt the feminine, when we restore the feminine, actually the end game is union. That's not to be forgotten. It's not just about exalting the feminine or bringing her back. It's about serving union. It's about the restoration of the ancient king-making traditions, because guess what? The masculine is also suffering. It's not just the feminine who suffered from patriarchy. The masculine suffered just as much, if not more. Yeah, but we think men benefited from it. Well, ask any man who is in his king emanation. He will tell you that's not the truth, that they are actually also suffering. All of us are suffering. But it is the feminine who is most inclined to pursue the spiritual path, because women are inherently spiritual. We are the one. When I was a trainer, a coach trainer, it's so funny. I was always looking like, but why do we always have 80% women in the room? Where are all the men? Why are they not coming to the trainings? And later on, as I dove into my own priestess memories, I realized it's because the feminine, that's where she should be. Her man should be out being the provider in the world. It's not his place to sit and learn about coaching. It's not where he should be. It's fine that he is not there, because he's the earth's king. He's the provider. He's out there with his sword on his quest. Leave him alone. It's the woman's job to actually attend the trainings and then give him guidance, give him counsel from your oracular womb channel. Then when he is with you, he will receive the transmission, which is very nuanced. It's not about mothering him and telling him what to do. That's what many women get wrong. It's not about pedestalizing yourself and thinking, oh, I'm the spiritual advisor here. No, it's actually about creating the field within which his own abilities get evoked. Yeah, but I'm getting this was like a whole download. Okay, I need to stop here just to give you
Absolutely
space to
beautiful. I have so many questions. One of the first things that I want to ask is to ground this for those listening into kind of a real life example. What would be an example of a sacred union that you can think of in the world today that people might recognize as, a woman and a man who are ruling together? Can you think of an example of that?
Oh, it does not exist. It
Mm,
does not exist. Or, you know what? Like, I think it probably exists, but you will never see it on social media. You
mm,
will never see it somewhere, I don't know, in a magazine. It's not like a Hollywood power couple, because um I will tell you why. Because when you ask me to think of an example, I am somehow thinking of common everyday people who are
mm.
just holding the codes
Yeah.
and sharing the codes. I'm thinking about some good marriages that I have seen. For example, my late grandma's sister with her late husband. They were such a beautiful couple. When a couple is in that union, they illuminate the entire family tree, because in their presence, you know what there is? There is safety.
Mm,
So many people carry, as you so well know, carry trauma from broken union codes in their families of origin. And that creates profound sense of dissatisfaction and lack of safety, unsafety around both the feminine and the masculine, because there is fracture, and then people disconnect from their own feminine and their own masculine. When there are fractures in their own feminine design, they disown the mystery and they create a lot of distrust. They distrust the magical, the mystical realm. They escape into the head. When there is fracture in the masculine, what often happens is people start projecting that onto God, and they distrust God, and they then cannot receive guidance. So essentially, they are all alone, and that's how it's very easy for them to plug into synthetic and inorganic paradigms and lose their sovereignty. But when we repair union, we repair that as well automatically. So I'm just thinking, about those examples that I have seen somewhere in my field. And I just have to think, sometimes you'd see an old couple, I don't know, walking in a park and holding hands, and like, oh, they're so cute. They're so sweet. That's what I'm thinking about.
mm,
I'm not thinking about power couples. I'm not thinking about celebrities. I'm not thinking about, because, that in this day and age, it can be easily fabricated. It can
mm,
be, but it's vacuous in its undertone. So what I'm seeing is sacred union does not necessarily need to be celebrated or practiced in public. It can be something that families hold within themselves, because it's on the personal level that we transform. And for me, my deepest desire is to meet somebody with whom I can create that, and to hold the frequency. Because let's not forget, we are all pillars. We are emanating into the field. We are uploading frequencies into the field 24/7, whether we want it or not. So when you are building sacred union within your existing marriage or your existing relationship, when you start to realize that your union holds spiritual power, and there is a purpose greater than just you being together or having a good life, that greater purpose begins to illuminate some hidden codes that you carry within. It becomes a mission. It becomes literally a ministry that you hold. And it changes your emanation. It changes the energy that you put out into the world. It changes how your children grow up, how even just, again, your acquaintances, your colleagues, your friends, how they perceive themselves. And unfortunately, we lost in our society, we lost the value of union. Hello, we lost the ability to add spiritual purpose to relationships. I'm not gonna don't even get me started on dating culture and all of that. I'm just like, it's too sad. It's too
mm.
sad.
So you touched on the aspect of the feminine that is known as Kingmaker. And, currently I am in your program Elixir, and you were teaching all of us about the various facets of the divine feminine. And so I'm curious if you can speak a little bit about the Kingmaker aspect of the feminine.
Well, yes. So in Elixir, we are talking about the 8 aspects of the feminine. And if somebody is interested in that, there is a free inquiry on my website where I explain the 8 deep feminine magic. Just go to free resources on templeofstarfire.com. You can download the audio inquiry where I explain what the 8 are. And one of them is indeed a kingmaker. You can treat it as an archetype, because as I've already mentioned, in the ancient world, very often priestesses were also mothers of kings, like in ancient Egypt and in Sumeria as well. They were seen as highly coded women who can create purity in the bloodline and who can infuse the child with those codes. Let's even consider Mother Mary, in the miraculous conception or light conception of Jesus, Yeshua. She was in a way a kingmaker because she could birth the king, because she herself was so highly coded and so devotional, and her channel was so pure, she could give that to the child. That's one aspect of kingmaker, as the one who can birth. Another aspect of a kingmaker is how a woman treats men. If a man is coded with the king template, in her presence, in her presence, the template gets evoked. You will see not every woman can get her man to rise. Not every woman can evoke a man's potential, because a lot of men have not had good examples in their mothers. They were emasculated by their mothers, and many women were not taught by their mothers how to treat a man. So they often start emasculating him subconsciously because they hate men. They were taught to hate men. I think it's a huge problem. It's a huge problem nowadays that women are taught to hate men, and women are pitted against each other. They, instead of true polarity, instead of masculine and feminine being, seen as two complementary forces who only exist in union, who need each other, who need to revere and respect each other, they are presented as enemies, as if it's battle of the sexes, as if there's only one winner. So the kingmaker is the opposite of that. She exalts the masculine. She will actually get on her knees to serve the masculine, but not as a subservient 50s housewife girl, but she recognizes that within him there is God. She is able to see God in every man. She is able to place a crown on his head, an imaginary crown, and evoke the best in him. But if he doesn't have that coding, if he is in distorted masculine, there is no magic, okay? There is no high priestess who can just anoint him on the head and he will become king and rise and whatever, like it takes two here. But what I'm saying is a lot of men do not reach their potential because they feel deeply unseen by women in their lives. It's quite fascinating what you find out when you start talking to men, and how many of them are disillusioned, how many of them are feeling the burden of all this responsibility, all those social expectations, but then they feel that nobody's actually supporting them. And that's why many men need priestesses. I know you work with a lot of men because you act as that high priestess who can support masculine leaders in their leadership without being in a personal relationship with them. And I feel that is lost in our culture. Blessed are men who have spiritual advisors who are women, because sometimes exactly that's what they need. They need the liminality of the feminine. They need her non-linear multidimensional nature. They need her spiritual counsel. My mom was very good at that with my dad. She was so good with giving him intuitive advice that with her support, he quickly escalated his career and became very, very successful. Not because she told him what to do. She was technically stay-at-home mom for most of her life, but she was the most important advisor in his company. And I don't know how she got the codes, okay? But I'm hoping she passed them on. So when I talk about the kingmaker, I'm mostly actually talking from direct transmission from my mother, because I saw it in action. I saw what it can do. And their marriage was by far not perfect, okay? It was not perfect whatsoever. And eventually they even divorced. But I felt that she had that ability to evoke the best in him through offering intuitive counsel, through offering oracular advice, advice that is not from the head. It's from her seeing. If she has the sight, if she is a prophetess, she can tell him, she can preview timelines. And this is the kind of advice that she needs. But again, not every woman can do that. Not every man wants that.
Yep.
And What I wish for is that the institution of temples and the institution of priestesses is brought back to the world, because then men will have access to spiritual guidance. They will have access to those portal ways where they don't necessarily even have to use their wives or their girlfriends for it. They can go to a professional priestess who will provide that counsel and who will provide that king-making, let's say, king-making chamber that has nothing to do with, let's say, sacred sexuality, because sometimes they are merged and sometimes they're not, you know, because like Oracle of Delphi, they didn't have to go and partake. They actually, some sources say that oracles of Delphi were virgin. So, you know, it has nothing to do with necessarily sexuality, although it can be connected to that. Yeah, so that's just a very brief answer, because, you know, it's actually a secret teaching. So there are so many layers that need to be kept behind closed doors for initiates who are ready. But to answer in short, maybe it will, you know, evoke somebody's remembrance, somebody's template, and they would be like, okay, this rings a bell, something about this.
Yes, absolutely. I appreciate you sharing that. And I'm also curious. So you've mentioned a few times in this discussion around codes, and I would love for you to just give a little bit of an explanation about what are codes, because that is something that I think there's a lot of curiosity about and a lot of misinformation around. And I think we could use some clarity on that.
Oh, definitely. Because one thing about me is I really love giving definitions to complex terms. We need to sit down and define what is channeling, what is a template, what is a blueprint, what is a code. So I'm literally going to read you a definition. I have it now already. Because one day I thought, you know what, everybody's using this on Instagram. And I created this post that was titled, "What the fuck are codes?" So I'm just literally going to read it.
I love that post. So go read away.
Yeah, many people did. I think it made rounds. So a code is a data set containing encrypted information from high dimensional realms. A code is a frequency stream arranged as a constellation of energy patterns, perceived on multiple levels and in subtle ways, beyond the usual forms of human communication, such as words, imagery, etc. Codes are source energy templates. Condensed into digestible bits, they are installed etherically before incarnation and/or contained deep within dormant DNA strands and cellular memory. Held at the core of one's innermost being, codes are meant to be unlocked, embodied, expressed in ways that are often preordained and governed by divine timing, and so on and so forth. So essentially, if I just paraphrase this, so codes, when we're talking about, okay, she has codes or priestess codes, we are talking about data, invisible data. We are not talking about information. We are not talking about knowledge. We are talking about embodied gnosis. Gnosis is one of my favorite words because gnosis means direct revelation. It means direct knowledge. And it's also interesting that in Greek, the word apocalypse means the unveiling or revelation. So essentially to have the codes is to resurrect the world, because everybody is afraid of the apocalypse. But in a way, the apocalypse is coming because we will start understanding the true nature of everything, which is energy. And essentially, so codes are basically streams of data that exist either within our DNA. So codes, maybe some Kingmaker codes were passed down to me by my mother, who got it God knows from where, maybe from some other ancestors far down the line. And sometimes codes can skip generations. They can be dormant and then they get activated when the time is right. Or codes can also come from the soul level. They can be in your Akashic records, they can be in your field and you download them. Or you can receive new codes, for example, new instruction sets for your mission from God or from your spirit guides or from whatever you're working with. And that's why codes are very real. And some people, you know, are making fun of it. They're going like, oh, you don't need to hire a mentor for their codes. It's all bullshit. They are just like scamming you. I think it's just disrespectful. Sorry, people. You cannot dismiss something that you haven't experienced. And of course, there are people who are a little bit scammy, you know, who are like, oh, I've got the codes. Or they present themselves as the one and only source, and like they have the codes, they own the codes. Let me tell you, the most important thing about codes, you don't own them. You are just a transmitter, just like your radio device in your car does not own the song,
right?
It is just transmitting it. I call it the vassal template, the vassal way. That is the original, also important aspect of the feminine and all the priestess coding. that you contain literally information that you did not create. So this is the most important thing to realize. The codes, they do not originate from you. You are simply carrying them. Just like you carry instruction sets within your DNA, there are dormant DNA strands that contain light codes written in light language glyphs that can be activated by transmission, but you don't own them. You are just possessing them within this lifetime for them to be shared, for them to give you access to certain abilities. Because when you download a code, essentially it means you now can, with that code, run a program. You can code your reality. You can write a new script. So they are given to you as door openers. They are given to you as keys, as key codes, yeah? But you don't own them. So you cannot say that you have created a code, because only God can do that. We as human beings are just transmitters. That's why devotion and humility are so important. There is no spiritual leadership without devotion, and there is no spiritual leadership without humility. Because if you decide that I am a high priestess on a throne and I have codes, and you are very lucky to have access to my field and be in my proximity, you know, like I'm just making fun, as being sarcastic. You're toast, because you've lost your devotion. You've lost the right relationship with who is actually calling the shots. And the only force for that is love and God. And that's why, to me, codes are not a big deal. Many people turn it into such a big deal. Why? Because they feel a sense of ownership. For me, that sense of ownership does not exist. So, for example, if I have unlocked certain codes around the feminine, I feel it is my job to share it and to transmit that. And then, of course, my human self will be adequately compensated for the effort of downloading it, because downloading the codes is hard work. Yeah, it will turn you inside out, as you very well know, Jennie. But I'm not saying that I own those codes. I'm just delivering them. I'm just expressing them through whatever eloquence my human self can master. And I'm just using whatever gifts and skills my human self has to be able to condense those codes into digestible bits that can be filtered through the intelligence of a human brain. But essentially, codes are a gift. They are a gift. They are pure light. They are light expressed in data, as data.
Beautiful. I love that. Now, I would love for you to discuss more around the aspect of the divine feminine called the Initiatrix, or the process of initiation, and the feminine's role in that.
Well, you see, that's very similar to what we have already discussed. Initiatrix and Kingmaker kind of go together, because again, in the ancient world, it was the feminine who had the power to unlock doors, who had the power to introduce society to new paradigms. And that is the Initiatrix. The Initiatrix is the one who allows new processes to get started. She opens doors to realms that you didn't even know existed. She holds the keys. But again, she is not the gatekeeper. She's the gate opener for the ones who are ready. And an initiation is an alchemical process. It's a shape-shifting process where you see, it happens on multiple levels. It always happens within a chamber of initiation that often is presented, for example, as a challenging situation in your life. It can be a grief portal way, or it can be some fluctuations in your relationship, or it can be just a deeply personal existential crisis, or even dark night of the soul. And what are you getting initiated into? You are getting turned inside out, because it's a transformational, alchemical undoing, unraveling of old synaptical connections, of old DNA templates. So it's like you are getting cooked, okay? You are in a cauldron, and the Initiatrix is stirring the cauldron. Right? So that's why it can be so helpful. Even in the hero's journey mythology and so on, you will always see that at some point a hero is meeting a mentor, and that mentor is the Initiatrix or the initiator. It's very hard to go through such a cauldron experience alone. That's why we need mentorship, and we need spiritual leaders. Again, we need priestesses and priests and healers in this world who can accompany human beings through those initiatory cauldrons that are so manifold, and multiple these days. And so essentially, it's a process of inner shape-shifting where the old needs to be burnt away, and then the new can arise. That's in short an initiation. It has its own inner logic. It's like a spiral that you're going down that spiral, and like, whoa, it's like a vortex that sucks you in. And I think it's very interesting to see that at some point there needs to happen that breaking point where you lose control and you hand it over to God and you surrender. And ultimately, again, Initiatrix is the representation of God in the sense of she accompanies people through those processes. But it is only God who can initiate. You cannot initiate anybody. I cannot initiate anybody. I can simply hold the space and accompany people while they meet God face to face. And as said, it has to happen with you being willing to give up control and you being willing to recognize that, hey, I cannot do this alone. A lot of people are not passing the initiations because they insist that they know better, or they insist that it needs to stop, that they are finished, that they are done, that they deserve to graduate. There is a lot of spiritual entitlement that needs to be worked through. And essentially, there is again that level of deeply surrendering and partnering with your own soul and allowing yourself to find that light within the void. So it's all really connected, really. It is an alchemical chamber. One could even say it is a variation of a bridal chamber of the union between the human and the divine. It's all quite metaphysical and esoterical, I must say.
Okay. Now, I'm curious about, we've talked about the divine feminine and priestesses. What would be the role, let's say, of a priest and priestess working together?
That's very interesting. I've recently read something interesting that early Christianity, just after the crucifixion, the apostles and the missionaries who were spreading the word of Christ, of Yeshua, they worked in pairs. There are some scholars that say that the followers of Yeshua were essentially couples, which I find amazing, especially if you trace it back to the Yeshua and Magdalene connection and them being a couple. Yeah. And so I think that in ancient Egypt, there were a lot of rituals in temples that required both a feminine and a masculine counterpart, priestess and priest, in sex, magic, alchemy, because it simply is a mirror of what I have already explained, the alchemical marriage of the feminine and the masculine and sacred union. It is the unification of opposites, the dance of opposites, the electromagnetic field that can only exist when there are two. But of course, a lot of that was distorted and broken. That's why most of us are currently working solo, working alone without a partner. And how I see it, it's not even necessary that your partner is ministering with you, but maybe they are holding space for you. They don't even have to understand what you're doing in your work. It's not required, but that there is a counterpart holding space for you. For me, at the moment, I am unpartnered. So for me, that partnership is mostly with the masculine on the inner planes, as if there is the sacred beloved on the inner planes. He is not incarnated, like sitting next to me at the moment. Maybe someday he will be. He'd better hurry up. Okay. Accepting matchmaking requests here on your podcast. That is just so blunt of me. Anyway, you never know.
You never know.
But anyway, so you can also interface with that divine masculine counterpart or divine feminine counterpart on the inner planes as your energetic equal who is holding space for you on some level. That's what I'm always feeling when I'm teaching. I'm even feeling it now, that we're talking about. I'm like, okay, there is this force holding space for me. And I think that's what we are moving into. Again, the restoration of union, the redefinition of even what it means to be a family, the redefinition of relationships that are moving into finally more of a sacred context where it's no longer for survival and it's no longer for free for all, people doing whatever outside of any sacred context. So I'm hopeful that this template is now resurrecting on the planet, and union will become a spiritual force. It will become a spiritual force.
Beautiful. So I am curious, what are you offering in the world right now in terms of your work? How can people connect with you?
Well, at all times, I'm offering myself as a vessel for God. I told you recently, I was like, I'm taking a sabbatical for 2 months. I'm not going to do anything. And God is like, ha, ha, ha.
I noticed that doesn't seem to unfold.
Yes. So I'm always offering myself as a vessel. And what that looks like is there are, offerings that come through me and I burst them into the world. And there are various ways through which I work with people. So my website is templeofstarfire.com. All of my latest offerings are always there, as well as free resources, masterclasses, trainings. And I'm on Instagram at Starfire Priestess. Instagram is my favorite playground. And of course, I also have a newsletter. And currently, you see, I have two big passions. One passion is feminine mysticism and priest work. They are very much connected for me. It is training people in being that sacred doorway on various levels. Next year, I think the curriculum will be more layered, because some people are just beginning, some people are super advanced, they want to go deep. So I work with people at different stages, but mostly it's like middle and end stages, advanced and medium advanced. So beginner work is not really my specialty, but I can give recommendations. There are many people who support people who are just awakening. For me, it's like people who already had an awakening or who were born awake, and now they are already walking the path, but they want specific guidance in the realm of feminine mysticism or in the realm of priestess work, and holding that, and also unlocking their abilities with codes, with the quantum, with the energy realm. So that's one passion, one playground that is always going. And another passion that I have is leadership and business, especially spiritual business, because many people who have a ministry, a soul mission, who are coded to be priestesses and visionaries in this new world, they express their gifts through the vehicle of a business. And here we have again to bridge the realms. You can't only hope that God will bring you everything, but you also can't just use, old school business strategies or common business strategies like, okay, 6 figures in 6 days. It doesn't work for mystics. And that's why I always offer a mastermind for what I call ambitious mystics, a spiritual business mastermind, where I work with spiritual entrepreneurs who are coded as priestess and mystics. I have this understanding and I have an embodied getting of what it means to walk this path and build a successful spiritual business without compromising my integrity or without doing things that I don't want to do. I have like 700 followers on Instagram, but I have no problem filling up my courses and offerings, because it's not about that. That's the mastermind. And yeah, so those are two playgrounds, two offerings, and I am always available also for, not always, but mostly available for one-on-one. I don't publicly promote it, because I love divinely arranged unions between me and clients, just like with you, Jennie. You just like kind of came out of nowhere. And if somebody comes and says, hey, I prefer one-on-one because group work is not for everybody, and some people want to combine one-on-one and group work, that is also possible. I love doing long-term mentoring like we do with you. Some people want a bit of more like an intensive, maybe like 4 weeks of intensive work. So I'm kind of flexible in that, but it needs to be by soul resonance. And if that interests you, if you feel resonance with what I'm saying, just reach out to me on Instagram or via email, and we will see what we can do. So yeah, that's my spiel.
Yes. And I can attest to, really, you have helped me with all of these things. You have such a gift in the business world. You have, such an intellect, and also all of these mystical abilities and skills, and the merging and blending of all of them is so powerful. So I can absolutely attest to all aspects of everything that you offer, and it's absolutely phenomenal. So thank you so much for joining me here today. I appreciate this conversation, and I know that my listeners are going to very much resonate with what you've shared.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. May this conversation reach the ones who need it, and may activate you and bless you. Thank you so much. Be well, everybody.